Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this call. This is their third and final panel discussion the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention will be hosting this month. An archive of our previous panels focusing on men in the middle years and teen suicide and social media can be found at www.actionalliancesp.org. This conversation will also be live tweeted, and you can share your thoughts, ideas, and questions on Twitter by tweeting to the hashtag suicide reporting, or by adding your questions in the Q&A area of this Hangout. Suicide is a complex issue, and we know there is no one factor that leads to suicide. The topic of suicide among our nation's veterans and service members has received considerable attention in recent years. Estimates of 22 veterans dying by suicide each day, or one service member dying by suicide each day, are often widely referenced without context or discussion of some of the underlying issues and challenges that could lead to a reduction in these rates. For example, we know there are significantly more Vietnam-era veterans that die by suicide each year than their OEF, OIF counterparts. We also know this is true about the general population. Suicide rates for men in their middle years are among the highest in the nation and have actually been increasing in recent years. We know that transition periods, like the process of leaving military service, divorce, or retirement, can be especially high-risk periods. Data also suggests that suicide rates among service members that have never deployed are actually comparable to or even higher than those who have deployed to a combat zone. Today, we're going to focus our conversation on the efforts underway across our nation to engage veterans, service members, their families, and their communities directly around the issue of suicide prevention. This is not solely a military or veteran issue. We all have a role to play. Through this panel series and our broader work at the Action Alliance, our goal is to raise awareness of suicide as a public health issue and promote a national conversation around suicide that's focused on hope, connectedness, social support, resilience, treatment, and recovery, with a goal of saving 20,000 lives in 5 years. The way suicide is covered by the media can have either a negative influence on behavior by contributing to sensationalism and contagion, or a positive influence by encouraging help-seeking and reducing stigma. More than 50 research studies worldwide have found that certain types of news coverage can increase the likelihood of suicide in vulnerable individuals. Responsible reporting can change popular misconceptions and correct falsehoods. Hopefully, our discussion today will underscore that suicide is a complex issue and there are generally multiple causes that can contribute to it. I encourage everyone on this call to take a look at the recommendations for reporting on suicide located at www.reportingonsuicide.org. With that, we have an exciting panel with us here today, and I'd like to talk through these issues and take a quick moment to introduce them to you. First, we have Dr. Caitlin Thompson, who's the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Deputy Director of Suicide Prevention. Prior to leading VA's suicide prevention efforts, she spent 5 years as the clinical care coordinator for the Veterans Crisis Line hotline and chat service. Next, we have Dr. Keita Franklin, who's the director of the Defense Suicide Prevention Office and is responsible for policy and oversight of the U.S. Department of Defense's suicide prevention programs. Dr. Franklin previously served as the head of the Behavioral Health Branch at Headquarters Marine Corps from 2009 until 2015, and had been charged with leading the integration of U.S. Marine Corps behavioral health programs. Captain Aaron Werbel is director of the Midshipman Development Center at the U.S. Naval Academy, where he oversees a professional staff providing counseling, education, and prevention services to midshipmen. Captain Werbel also has served as an embedded mental health provider and was appointed by the Secretary of Defense as a member of the 2007 U.S. Department of Defense Task Force on Mental Health and the 2010 DoD Task Force on the Prevention of Suicide by members of the Armed Forces. Also joining us is Lily Mells, who's a suicide prevention coordinator for VA in the Hampton Roads area of Virginia. She's an Air Force veteran who was deployed in the military as a mental health provider. During her 15 years in the Air Force, she conducted individual and group therapy counseling sessions and held clinics on issues such as domestic violence and drug and alcohol use. Colonel William Sean Lee is the Joint Force Headquarters Chaplain for the Maryland National Guard. He's the founder of Partners in Care, an innovative program designed to engage and support Guard and Reserve members and their families through local faith communities. He serves Major General Linda Singh, the Maryland Military Department Adjutant General, and is responsible for providing religious support to nearly 6,700 Maryland National Guard members and their families. Finally, we're honored to have Chief Warrant Officer Cliff Baumann join us today. He was a responder at the Pentagon on 9/11 and is a survivor of an attempted suicide, after which he realized he needed support. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, received treatment, and now believes that counseling has made him a stronger man and a stronger soldier. As you can see, we have a diverse and dynamic group here today who will share their thoughts and experiences around military and veteran suicide. With that, we're going to start our conversation today with Dr. Thompson. Caitlin, the VA has been a leader in developing an integrated approach to suicide prevention and outreach around this critical issue. Can you tell us a bit about some of the work VA is doing in this area and how they're working specifically with veterans, families, and communities directly?
Absolutely, Jack. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on this panel of these extraordinary men and women. Thanks, everybody, for also listening in today. The VA has, in fact, the largest integrated suicide prevention program in the country. And what that means is we have over 300 suicide prevention coordinators who are locally based at every VA medical center and large community-based outpatient clinics. Their responsibilities are to really oversee their local policies and procedures, as well as in terms of suicide prevention, as well as be really the touch points in terms of community outreach. And they also provide education to every VA employee, as well as many community providers and others on the signs and symptoms of suicide and really how to talk with somebody if they're feeling suicidal. Finally, sorry, first, before I end this, we also have the Veterans Crisis Line, which is also co-branded as the Military Crisis Line, which is at 1-800-273-8255. You press 1 if you're a service member, family member, friend of a veteran, service member. We also have an online chat system as well as a texting service. We're really proud of those services that we provide. There we have over 300 responders who take calls 24/7, 365 days a year for any veteran or service member who may be in crisis. As I said, VA has a very large program and one that I'm happy to take questions about as we continue.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. Makita, we know the DoD has committed considerable time to this issue and has developed a number of innovative approaches to moving suicide prevention efforts to the front lines and promoting a coordinated community response to the issue of suicide prevention within the military community. Can you share a bit about those efforts and what's happening at DoD?
Yes, thank you so much. I'd be glad to. I appreciate the opportunity to participate on this panel as well. Across the department, certainly we recognize that suicide is a complex problem, complex issue that calls for a comprehensive solution set. And one of our key initiatives is this notion of pulling together an integrated service delivery model in the context of multiple stakeholders that have a role in the prevention of suicide. So stakeholders such as the chaplains, who you'll hear from one today, but also medical providers, non-medical providers, peers, and most importantly, line leaders all have a role on the prevention of suicide. And so across the department, we've taken great strides to train all these gatekeepers or communities of practice, so to speak, on that role, and then also provide multiple forums to ensure that these communities are linked up well, such that folks are receiving an integrated, coordinated approach to the service delivery at the installation level. We've also worked hard on policy development within the department, but one policy that I'd like to highlight in particular is the policy around lethal means restriction and just this notion of asking the question if you're interacting with somebody that might be at risk, asking the question as to whether or not they would be willing to allow you to restrict their access to lethal means, and so we have pushed out a policy on that, which is an exciting initiative at the policy level because we see implications for that at the practice level where folks are able to truly make a difference and keep people safe. Other than that, we also are a big proponent across the department of peer-to-peer interventions, and so you see specific trainings like Never Leave a Marine Behind, or other types of peer-to-peer training opportunities. We know that when people in the military are at risk, they often go to their peers before they come to professionals, and so we're putting a lot of an emphasis on training peers so that peers can respond and do that hands over, warm handoff referral to a professional if necessary, and also make sure that the peers understand the risk factors involved in suicide. And like Dr. Thompson, I'm also available for questions and eager to participate more in this dialogue.
Great, thank you, Keita. Caitlin, that discussion on the peer side, and we're going to move on to Captain Werble in just a second. VA has also taken an approach with peer-based outreach. So we're going to hear from Lily in a few moments as a suicide prevention coordinator, but you're also embedding peer specialists within care delivery itself. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely right, Jack. Yes, we have peer support specialists at every VA, or at most VAs around the country at this point. We continue to increase our numbers because we know that veterans connect with other veterans, peers connect, and so it's really important for us to be able to provide those opportunities for veteran peers, and especially those veterans who may have also had comparable mental health conditions with other veterans who are seeking help, but those who have gotten through and done better and gotten the treatment that they need.
Great, thank you. We're going to turn now to Captain Werble. Aaron, you're working with the next generation of leaders at the Naval Academy, and you've also had direct experience pushing mental health services forward within the DoD. Can you talk a little bit about your experience?
Absolutely, Jack. Thank you for inviting me to participate. And I'd also like to welcome all of you to the Hangout today, and thank you for joining us to talk about such an important issue. I'd really like to focus my words here on a critical element we've really learned about over the years in DoD and certainly in the Navy and the Marine Corps, where I've focused most of my attention, and really pushing suicide prevention to the front lines. And I think it's critical, if we're going to talk about pushing suicide prevention to the front lines, to define what I mean by that. And really, it's twofold. It's who is the front lines and where are the front lines. And you know, it's fall season, it's September, and in my house, for me and my daughters, that means football is what we're talking about. And I think there's a great metaphor in football and what we're hearing about today. You know, we hear most of the news about a select number of skilled players. We hear about the quarterbacks. We're hearing about the wide receivers. We're hearing about the running backs. And they're the ones that get most of the attention. They're certainly the ones getting paid the big bucks. But when you really listen to the commentators and you're watching the game, you start to hear much more about what's going on in the trenches, what's going on in the front lines, the offensive line and the defensive line. And if they're controlling that line of scrimmage, well, that's what's giving the opportunity for those other players who maybe have had some different kinds of training to really get in and make another difference. So I think just like in football, the battle against suicides really has to happen at those front lines in the trenches. And who am I talking about? Of course, it's the soldiers, the sailors, the airmen, the Marines. But it's actually more than that. It also has to include, as you've heard alluded to, family members, friends, and first responders. So the more we can really engage and push suicide prevention forward to those frontline individuals, really the better off we're going to be. I also want to talk a little bit about the where. So we've discussed who that frontline is, but where are they? You know, I work primarily in hospital settings. I work, you know, behind a desk in an office. And what I'm really talking about with the front line is, you've heard alluded to, I think it was Dr. Franklin mentioned embedded. And we've gained so much by embedding our mental health providers and our chaplains forward, whether it's forward deployed with special forces, with combat units, deploying and redeploying with them. I was forward deployed on a ship patrolling in the Arabian Sea. Getting psychologists up from behind the desks in hospitals out to the front lines with our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, our Marines. It helps us also really learn the culture that we're a part of. And that's what's going to make a difference here, is we have to take the language that we know as mental health providers and be able to translate that into the language of our service members and their families. Just to give you one example of that. Combat soldiers come back from an action, and they're not actually used to huddling together as a group and having someone say, okay, let's talk about your feelings now. What they are used to is what we call an after-action report. They will always sit down and go through an after-action report with the other members of their unit, with their commanders, and discuss what went well, what went wrong, what might be some of the after effects or impacts of the action that just took place. That's the place to talk about mental wellness, to talk about suicide prevention, to talk about anything emotional that might come up within the context of an after-action report, so that it's translating this language of suicide prevention into the language that makes the most sense for the members we're trying to reach the most.
Terrific. Thank you, Aaron. Just want to offer a quick reminder to folks. We're getting a number of questions in. We appreciate those, and we'll be jumping into those in just a few minutes. For those of you who are listening and want to have a question, remember you can submit it by tweeting it to the hashtag suicide reporting or by using the Q&A section of this Hangout. Well, as we turn, using Captain Werbel's analogy, Lily, I guess you're the starting right tackle for VA. You're out there in the trenches, in the community every day, working with service members, veterans, their families to engage them around this issue. Can you talk to us a little bit about your unique role in VA and what you're seeing out there? I think, Lily, I think we're going to need you to get you to unmute. I think you might be muted on your phone, your speaker there.
Am I better now?
There you go. All right, great.
Thank you. So what I was saying is that it's an honor to be on this panel, having served in the military, having deployed before, and now working on the other side, providing care to veterans. So it's an honor to be here. And as a suicide prevention coordinator, yes, my role is challenging. But I will tell you this, all the suicide prevention coordinators and their team members, we're up to the challenge. We're definitely up to the challenge. So some of the things that we do is, first and foremost, we make sure that those veterans who contact us via the crisis hotline, that we have a warm handoff, that we make sure that we get them to the front door, we get them to the ER if necessary, we make sure that they have the appropriate information to get help. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, part of our role is outreach. So we go out into the community, and as you said, we're out in the trenches. So we go to the military installations. We're out at community events. We're out at hospitals. We're out at colleges. We're at veteran service organizations. We're at libraries. Anywhere where there is a veteran, we are there, handing out materials, explaining to folks how they can receive help. Even if they're unsure of their military status, we still have resources where they can be helped. Even if they have other than honorable discharge, we still have resources where we can get them help. Another thing that we do, or at least as a suicide prevention coordinator, we do a lot of education. So we go out to the churches, we educate the church on services that are available at the VA, what some of their members may be enduring and coming back from deployment, and we make sure that they understand and have the information to give to those church members. We also educate our staff. We have all kinds of different disciplines at the hospital, and we try to make sure that they're aware of where to send their patients and what kind of information is available, and when someone leaves their office, what they need to do. So we're definitely out there getting the information out.
Terrific. Thank you so much for that, Lily, and look forward to coming back to you with some questions here as we jump into that. Chaplain Lee, Lily there was talking about the power of community and the power of faith communities in particular. We also know with a lot of our Guard and Reserve members, they may live far removed from military installation and outside the traditional network of support that can be there for service members and veterans. Can you talk a little bit about the Partners in Care program that you founded and some of the initiatives underway to connect with our Guard and Reserve families?
Sure, Jack, and thanks on behalf of Major General Singh and the Maryland National Guard. It's an honor to be part of this discussion. The context for the Guard is unique. I mean, this current conflict is the longest war in U.S. history. It's the longest war with an all-volunteer force since the American Revolution, and the first war in U.S. history where if you deployed and returned, you'd have to go again. And along with that context that's common for all the military, with the Guard, we've had Hurricane Katrina, Gulf Shore oil, rig, Southwest border mission, multiple snowstorms, and just recently in Maryland, the civil unrest in the city. So the resiliency of individuals and their relationships has really been stressed for the Guard in particular, with the additional deployments on a state and domestic operations level. We'll couple that with being the only full-time chaplain in the Maryland National Guard. In March of 2005, I started the initiative called Partners in Care. When the Guard deploys and returns, it doesn't deploy and return from a base or a post as active component often does. They may mobilize and demobilize through that, but they come back to communities. And we found out that a large untapped resource were our local faith communities.